Listen not casually, not half-aware, not distracted the way you've been before. Listen with the part of you that has been restless lately. The part of you that couldn't quite explain why things feel off, why your spirit feels pulled in a direction you can't fully understand. Because this exact moment is not random. It never was. There is a reason your eyes landed here. There is a reason you didn't scroll past this time. And there is a reason your heart just paused, even if only for a second, as if something inside you whispered, "Wait, this might be important." That whisper, that is not coincidence. That is not curiosity. That is divine interruption. There have been moments, have it there? Moments where you almost felt something, like a nudge, a quiet pull, a thought that didn't feel like your own. Maybe it came late at night when everything was silent. Maybe it came in the middle of your busiest hour, when you least expected it. A sudden urge to stop, to reflect, to listen. But each time, something distracted you. A notification, a conversation, a responsibility. And just like that, the moment passed. You told yourself, "I'll come back to it later." But later never came. And now here you are. Not because you planned it, not because you searched for it, but because heaven refused to let you miss it again. This is what you must understand right now. God has been trying to reach you. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. Through moments you dismissed, through feelings you ignored, through signs you explained away. And each time you skipped, each time you delayed, each time you chose noise over stillness, the message didn't disappear. And waited until now. Because now, something is different. Now, there is urgency. Now, there is a weight to this moment that you can feel, even if you can't explain it. It's in the way your focus sharpened as you read this. It's in the way your thoughts slowed down just enough to take this in. It's in that subtle tension in your chest, the kind that doesn't come from fear, but from recognition. You felt this before, haven't you? That sense that something bigger is happening behind the scenes of your life. That there are pieces moving that you can't see yet. That something is trying to get your attention, but you haven't fully turned toward it. And here's the truth that may shake you, but it will also wake you. This is not just another message. This is a moment heaven has been aligning specifically for you. Out of all the noise, all the distractions, all the endless content you could have consumed, this is where you stopped. This is where you stayed. And that alone tells you something powerful. Your spirit recognized what your mind is only just beginning to understand. You were meant to hear this. But don't mistake this moment as something gentle or optional. This is not a self-suggestion. This is not something you can bookmark for later and come back to when it's convenient. Because the same pattern that made you skip before will try to make you skip again. That's how it works. The closer you get to something real, something divine, something that could actually shift your life, the stronger the pull to look away becomes. But this time, something inside you resisted that pull. This time, you stayed. And that changes everything. Because when heaven interrupts your routine, it's never without purpose. When God steps into your timeline, it's never without reason. And when a message finds you at the exact moment you needed it, even if you didn't realize you needed it, that is not luck. That is alignment. So pause right now. Take this in. Because this is only the beginning. Something has already started and you are now part of it. And what comes next you cannot afford to miss. Type "I am listening" in the comments if you feel this moment is not a coincidence. Blessing code 2020 is now surrounding you. Here is something about a ticking clock that changes everything, isn't there? The moment time is no longer endless. the moment it becomes limited, the moment you realize there is a countdown attached to what you are experiencing, your entire awareness shifts. You begin to feel something deeper, something sharper, something more urgent. And right now, whether you fully understand it or not, you are standing inside that kind of moment. 45 minutes. That is not just a number. That is not just a random measure of time. That is a divine window. A window that has been opened specifically for you, at this exact point in your life, at this exact stage in your journey. And the reason it feels intense, the reason it feels almost pressing against your spirit is because this is not ordinary time. This is appointed time. You see, most of your life operates in routine time. The kind of time where days blend together, where moments pass without weight, where you tell yourself, "I'll do it later," because later always feels available. But there are rare moments, sacred moments, where time no longer behaves that way. Moments where heaven steps in and compresses everything into a single, critical window. Moments where delay is no longer harmless. Moments where postponing is no longer neutral. This is one of those moments. The 45-minute warning is not about fear. It is about focus. It is about pulling you out of distraction and placing you face to face with something that actually matters. Because if you are honest with yourself, you know how easy it is to drift. You know how quickly attention slips away. You know how many times you've told yourself you would pay attention to something important, only to get pulled back into noise, back into routine, back into the endless cycle of later. But what happens when later is no longer guaranteed? What happens when the window begins to close? That is what you are being confronted with right now. There is a reason the message did not say tomorrow or someday. There is a reason it did not give you unlimited time to think, to process, to delay. Because the opportunity connected to this moment is time-sensitive. Not because God is impatient, but because alignment requires response. And response requires presence. And presence requires you to stop right now and recognize what is happening. You are being called into awareness. And awareness cannot wait. Think about the moments in your life where everything changed. They did not come with endless preparation. They did not come when you felt completely ready. They came suddenly, unexpectedly, in a way that forced you to either respond or miss it. That is how transformation works. It does not always arrive gently. Sometimes it arrives with urgency, because urgency is the only thing strong enough to break you out of distraction. And that is exactly what this 45-minute window is doing. It is breaking the pattern of delay, the pattern of avoidance, the pattern of pushing things aside until they lose their power. Because what you are facing right now carries weight. It carries significance. It carries something that will not remain available forever. You may feel it in subtle ways. A slight tension, a heightened awareness, a sense that you should not rush through this, that you should not treat this like everything else you've seen or heard before, that you should stay just a little longer and listen more closely. That feeling is not random. That is the shift. Because when divine timing enters your life, it does not ask for convenience. It demands attention. It requires you to step out of autopilot and into intentional awareness. It requires you to recognize that not every moment is equal. Some moments carry more weight than others. Some moments determine direction. Some moments open doors that will not stay open forever. And this is one of those moments. The clock is ticking, not to scare you, but to wake you. Not to pressure you, but to position you. Not to overwhelm you, but to make sure you do not miss what has already begun. Because something has already started moving. Something has already been set into motion. and your response within this window will determine what happens next. So do not rush past this. Do not treat this lightly. Do not fall back into the same pattern that made you skip before. Because this time is different. This time is intentional. This time is precise. And the truth is simple. Even if it feels heavy, you are not being given time to waste. You are being given time to respond. Type "I will not delay" in the comments if you feel the urgency of this moment. Lesson code 4545 is now activated around your timing. There is a pattern that has been quietly shaping your life, and if you are honest with yourself, you have seen glimpses of it before. Not clearly, not all at once, but in moments that felt strangely familiar. Moments where something important tried to reach you, and yet somehow, you moved past it. Not intentionally, not with rebellion, but with subtle delay, with quiet avoidance, with a simple thought, "I'll come back to this later." And that is how the pattern began. It was never loud. It never forced itself on you. It didn't come as something obvious that you could easily recognize and confront. Instead, it came gently. A thought that lingered longer than you. A feeling that didn't quite belong to your normal routine. A sudden pause in the middle of your day that made you question what you were doing and why. These were not interruptions. These were invitations. But invitations can be ignored. And over time, without even realizing it, you became used to ignoring them. You see, skipping is rarely dramatic. It does not feel like rejection. It feels like postponement. It feels like something small, something harmless, something that does not carry consequences in the moment. But what you did not see, what you could not see at the time, was how those small moments were adding up. How each time you chose distraction over stillness, noise over awareness, movement over reflection, you were slowly creating distance between yourself and something that was trying to guide you. Not control you, not force you, guide you. And guidance requires attention. Think about how many times you felt something shift inside you, only to brush it off. How many times you sensed that you should stop, listen, reflect, or even change direction. But instead, you kept going. You told yourself it was nothing. You told yourself you were overthinking. You told yourself you would deal with it later, when things were quieter, when life slowed down, when you had more clarity. But clarity does not come from avoidance. Clarity comes from engagement. And every time you skipped, every time you moved past what you felt without exploring it, you delayed something that was meant to unfold in that very moment. This is what makes the pattern dangerous, and not because it is obvious, but because it is comfortable. It allows you to continue your routine without disruption. It allows you to stay in control of your time, your attention, your direction. But at the same time, it quietly disconnects you from something deeper. Something that does not force itself into your life, but waits for your willingness to receive it. And now, you are being shown this pattern for a reason. Because it has reached a point where it can no longer continue unnoticed. You may have thought those moments were random. You may have believed they were just passing thoughts or temporary emotions. But they were not random. They were consistent. They were intentional. And they were repeated because the message behind them was still waiting for you to receive it. That is why this moment feels different. Because this time, the pattern is being interrupted. This time, you are not being given the same easy option to skip and move on. This time, you are being asked, directly, clearly, unmistakably, to recognize what you have been avoiding. Not to shame you, not to overwhelm you, but to wake you up to something that has been patiently waiting for your attention. And here is the truth you may not have fully faced until now. Avoidance does not cancel what is meant for you. It only delays it. What you have been skipping has not disappeared. It has not been reassigned. It has not been taken away. It hath been waiting for a moment where you would stop long enough to see it clearly. Waiting for a moment where your attention would not be divided, where your focus would not be scattered, where your awareness would be strong enough to recognize what has been there all along. That moment is now. You are no longer unaware. You are no longer distant from the pattern. You are standing inside it, seeing it from a place you have not seen it before. And that changes everything. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Once you recognize it, you cannot return to the same level of unconscious skipping. And now, every moment carries a choice. To stay aware or to drift again. To listen or to ignore. To respond or to delay. And this time, the choice matters more than it did before. Because what you have been avoiding is not something small. It is not something insignificant. It is something that has been trying to align you, to redirect you, to bring clarity into areas of your life where confusion has been quietly growing. And now, the pattern is breaking. Not because it ended on its own, but because you are finally seeing it. And once you see it, you have the power to respond differently. Type "I choose awareness" in the comments if you are ready to break the pattern. Lesson code 3333 is now activating clarity in your life. As this message reaches deeper into your spirit, understand this: what you are receiving right now is not just for you. It is meant to flow through you. Just as seeds are sown into fertile ground to produce a harvest, this word is being planted so that others who are still lost in distraction can find clarity. The Lord says, "Whoever waters others will himself be watered," and right now, you have the opportunity to become that vessel. If this message stirred something within you, if it awakened something you have been skipping for too long, then do not let it stop here. I feel led to say this clearly. Your action in this moment can carry this same light to someone else who desperately needs it. There is a PayPal link waiting in the description and a QR code placed in every video, not as a request, but as an altar of obedience. Step into it. Sow with intention. Release your seed as a prophetic act, knowing that what you give will echo into lives you may never see, but heaven will always count. Act now, because delayed obedience is still disobedience, and this moment is calling you to move. There are dates in your life that come and go without meaning. Days that pass like shadows, unnoticed, unmarked, unremembered. But then there are dates that carry weight. Dates that feel different even before they arrive. Dates that seem ordinary on the surface, yet something inside you reacts to them in a way you cannot explain. August 13th is one of those dates. This is not just another day on a calendar. This is not just a number that appears and disappears like every other. This is a moment that was set long before you understood time, long before you became aware of your own path, long before you ever questioned why certain things in your life unfolded the way they did. This date was not created when you noticed it. It was established before you were ready to recognize it. And that is why it carries a different kind of energy. You may not have paid attention to it before. You may have passed through previous August 13 THS without realizing what was available to you in those moments. But that does not mean nothing was happening. It simply means you were not yet aware of it. Because awareness changes everything. What once felt ordinary begins to reveal layers. What once felt random begins to show intention. And now, you are being brought into that awareness. There are moments in life when time aligns with purpose. When something that has been forming beneath the surface finally reaches a point where it can no longer remain hidden. August 13th is not just a date. It is a convergence. A point where preparation meets opportunity. A point where what has been building quietly begins to move into visibility. You have felt this in subtle ways. Moments where you sensed that something was approaching, even if you could not define it. Moments where you felt anticipation without knowing what you were waiting for. Moments where your thoughts became more reflective, more questioning, more aware of things you had previously ignored. These were not random fluctuations. These were signal indicators that something was aligning behind the scenes. And now, the alignment is reaching its moment. This is what makes this day different. It is not about what the day looks like on the outside. It is about what it represents beneath the surface. It represents a shift, a turning point, a moment where something that has been delayed, avoided, or misunderstood begins to reveal itself with clarity. But clarity requires readiness, and readiness is not something that happens automatically. It is something that is built through awareness, through attention, through your willingness to recognize when something carries more meaning than it appears to. That is why this message is reaching you now, before the moment fully arrives. Because preparation determines perception. If you are not prepared, you will miss what is right in front of you. If you are distracted, you will overlook what was meant to guide you. August 13th is not waiting for you to be perfect. It is not waiting for you to have everything figured out. But it is waiting for you to be aware. Because what is connected to this date is not random. It is precise. Here is something that has been forming around you, something that has been moving into position without your full understanding. And when the moment arrives, it will not announce itself in a way that forces you to recognize it. It will appear naturally, almost quietly, as if it is just another part of your day. But beneath its surface, something significant will be unfolding. This is why timing matters. Because when a moment like this arrives, it does not stay open indefinitely. It presents itself, it offers its opportunity, and then it moves. Not because it is taken away, but because time continues forward. And if you are not aligned when it arrives, you will experience it without fully receiving what it carried. That is what makes this moment important. You are not being told this to create pressure. You are being told this to create awareness. Because awareness allows you to see differently. It allows you to notice what you would have previously ignored. It allows you to respond instead of react. And most importantly, it allows you to recognize that not all moments are equal. Some moments carry direction. Some moments carry clarity. Some moments carry change. And August 13th is one of those moments. You may not fully understand what it holds yet. You may not see exactly how it will unfold. But that is not the point. The point is that you are being positioned to meet it differently than you would have before. Not distracted, not unaware, not moving through it without recognition, but present. Because presence is what transforms a moment into meaning. And this time, you are not being left unprepared. You are being brought into alignment before it arrives. So when the day comes, you will not pass through it the same way you always have. You will not overlook what is being placed in front of you. You will not miss what has been quietly prepared for you to receive. This time, you will see it. This time, you will recognize it. This time, you will understand that this stake was never ordinary. It was always waiting for you to be ready. Type I am ready in the comments if you feel the significance of this moment. Blessing code 813 is now aligning your path. There is something approaching your life that you cannot fully see yet, but you have already begun to feel it. not in a clear, defined way, not in a way that allows you to explain it to someone else, but in that quiet, internal awareness that something is shifting, something is moving, something is building just beyond your current understanding. And the reason it feels unfamiliar is because it is not something you have experienced before in this way. This is not routine change. This is not the kind of shift that blends into your daily life and passes without impact. This is something that interrupts patterns, something that breaks expectations, something that arrives in a way that makes you stop and realize that what you thought was stable, what you thought was predictable, is no longer operating the same way. That is why it is described as unexpected, because you will not be able to prepare for it in the way you normally prepare for things. You will not be able to map it out, predict it, or control how it enters your life. It will come in a moment that feels ordinary on the surface, but beneath that surface, something significant will be unfolding. And when it happens, you will recognize it not because it looks dramatic, but because it feels different. You have felt hints of this already. Moments where your thoughts became unusually clear for no reason. Moments where something you once felt certain about suddenly felt uncertain. Moments where you sensed that something in your environment, your relationships, or even within yourself was beginning to change, even if nothing visible had happened yet. These were not coincidences. These were early signals, subtle indications that something was forming behind the scenes. And now, that formation is reaching a point of emergence. The unexpected event is not random. It is not chaotic. It is not something that appears without purpose. It is the result of a process that has been unfolding quietly, consistently, and precisely. But because you were not fully aware of that process, it will feel sudden when it finally reveals itself. This is what makes it powerful, because what feels sudden to you has actually been prepared over time. There is something about this moment that will challenge your current perspective. It will call you to question what you assumed was certain. It may disrupt something you have grown comfortable with. It may reveal something that was previously hidden, or it may open a path you did not even realize existed. But whatever form it takes, it will carry one consistent quality. It will demand your attention. You will not be able to ignore it the way you have ignored other moments, because it will not pass quietly. It will stand in front of you in a way that requires a response, not a reaction based on habit, not a decision made from distraction, but a response that comes from awareness. And this is where everything you have been hearing until now begins to matter. Because how you respond to what is coming will determine what it becomes in your life. If you are unaware, it will feel confusing. If you are distracted, it will feel overwhelming. But if you are present, if you are attentive, if you are aligned, it will feel like clarity. This is why you are being prepared in advance. Because the unexpected does not have to be chaotic. It becomes chaotic only when it meets unprepared awareness. But when you are aware, when you are attentive, when you are grounded in what you are sensing, the unexpected becomes an opportunity instead of a disruption. There is something else you need to understand. What is coming is not meant to harm you. It is meant to reveal something. Something that has been just outside your reach. Something that has been waiting for the right moment to come into your awareness. And that moment is approaching faster than you realize. You may feel a sense of anticipation building without knowing why. You may feel moments of stillness where your thoughts seem to pause, as if waiting for something to arrive. You may even feel a subtle urgency that does not connect to anything visible in your environment. These are not random sensations. These are responses to movement that is happening beyond what you can currently see. Because something is moving toward you. And when it arrives, It will not ask for your permission to be noticed. You will present itself. It will stand in your awareness, and it will require you to decide how you engage with it. That decision will not be neutral, because moments like this do not repeat in the same way. They come, they reveal, and they move forward, and whether you recognize them or not determines what they become in your life. This is why you are being told now, so that when the moment arrives, you do not treat it like everything else, so that you do not dismiss it, delay it, or move past it the way you have done before, so that you meet it with awareness instead of confusion. Because this time, the unexpected is not just something that happens to you. It is something that is happening for you, and your awareness will determine whether you see it that way. Type "I am alert" in the comments if you are ready to recognize what is coming. Lesson code 5555 is now activating awareness around you. There has been a voice present in your life for longer than you realize. Not a loud voice that demands attention, not something that interrupts you forcefully or pulls you out of your routine in a dramatic way. No, this voice operates differently. It speaks in stillness. It speaks in subtlety. It speaks in moments that are easy to overlook if you are not paying attention. And the truth you are beginning to recognize now is this: it has never stopped speaking to you. You may not have called it a voice before. You may have described it as intuition, as a feeling, as a passing thought that seemed deeper than your usual thinking. But there was always something different about it. Something that carried clarity even when everything else felt uncertain. Something that pointed you in a direction even when you did not fully understand why. That was not random. That was communication. There were moments when you felt prompted to pause, even when nothing around you required it. Moments when you sensed that you should not move forward with something, even though it seemed logical to do so. Moments when a sudden thought appeared, redirecting your attention to something you had not been considering. These were not interruptions of your thinking. They were guidance entering your awareness. But guidance does not force itself. It waits to be received. And that is where the pattern began to form. Because each time that voice reached you, you had a choice. To stop and listen, or to continue moving. To explore what you were sensing, or to dismiss it and return to what felt familiar. And more often than not, without realizing it, you chose to move forward without engaging with what you had just received. Not because you were rejecting it intentionally, but because it did not demand your attention the way everything else in your life does. You see, most things that compete for your attention are loud. They are urgent. They come with clear consequences if you ignore them. Messages, responsibilities, conversations, deadlines, these things pull you in immediately because they are designed to. But this voice does not operate that way. It does not compete. It does not force. It simply presents itself and waits. And if you are not aware, if you are not attentive, it is easy to miss. Think back to moments when you felt something strongly, only to ignore it and later realize you should have listened. Moments where you sensed something was not right, but you moved forward anyway. Moments where you felt drawn toward something, but you delayed and never returned to it. Those were not random misjudgments. Those were missed connections. Because that voice was already showing you something you had not yet fully seen. It has spoken to you through more than just thoughts. It has reached you through patterns, through repeated experiences that carried the same message in different forms, through conversations where certain words stayed with you longer than others, through moments of stillness where your mind became quiet and something deeper began to surface. It has even reached you through discomfort, through situations that did not feel right, through environments that seemed to drain you without explanation, through interactions that left you questioning something you could not clearly define. Those were not just emotional reactions. They were signals, indicators that something required your attention, your awareness, your discernment. But when those signals were ignored, they did not disappear. They returned, in different forms, at different times, with the same underlying message. Because what is meant for you will continue to reach you until you recognize it. And now, you are beginning to see the consistency of it. This voice hath been present through different phases of your life. It has guided you in ways you only understood after the fact. It has protected you in moments you did not realize were significant until later. It has tried to redirect you when you were moving in a direction that did not align with what was meant for you. But it requires one thing from you: attention. Without attention, it remains unheard. Without awareness, it remains unrecognized. Without your willingness to pause and engage with it, it continues to speak, but you continue to move past it. That is what is changing now. Because you are no longer unaware of it. You are no longer dismissing it as just a thought or a feeling that has no real significance. You are beginning to recognize that there has been a consistent presence in your life, guiding, redirecting, and revealing things to you in ways that you are only now starting to fully understand. And this moment is part of that communication. This is not separate from what you have experienced before. This is a continuation of it, a clearer expression of something that has been reaching you in quieter ways until now. Because sometimes, when subtle communication is not received, it becomes more direct, not to overwhelm you, but to make sure you do not miss it again. So now, the question is no longer whether the voice is there. The question is whether you will listen, not later, not when it feels more convenient, not when everything around you becomes quiet enough for you to focus, but now, in this moment, while your awareness is active, while your attention is present, while you can clearly recognize that something is reaching you. Because this time, it is not just speaking, it is waiting for your response. Type "I am listening" now in the comments if you are ready to stop ignoring the voice. Blessing code 6161 is now strengthening your awareness. There is a reason why staying focused has felt more difficult than usual. A reason why in moments when you try to become still, something immediately pulls your attention away. A reason why the closer you come to clarity, the more distractions seem to appear out of nowhere. This is not random. This is not just habit. This is resistance. And the moment you begin to recognize it, everything starts to make more sense. You may have noticed how easy it is to stay occupied with things that do not require depth. Endless scrolling, constant noise, small tasks that fill your time but leave your mind scattered. You may have told yourself that this is normal, that this is just how life works now. But if you look closer, you will see something deeper. You will see a pattern that intensifies the moment you try to shift your attention inward. The moment you try to slow down, something speeds up around you. The moment you try to focus, something distracts you. The moment you begin to reflect, something interrupts. That is not coincidence. That is resistance responding to your awareness. Because awareness changes direction, and direction changes outcomes. And anything that benefits from you staying distracted will naturally resist the moment you begin to pay attention. You have felt this in subtle but undeniable ways. Times when you decided to focus on something meaningful, only to suddenly feel tired, restless, or uninterested. Times when you intended to follow through on something important, but found yourself pulled into something else without even realizing how it happened. Times when your mind felt clear for a brief moment, only to become crowded again with unnecessary thoughts that made it difficult to stay present. These are not isolated experiences. They are part of a larger pattern. Because distraction is not always about what you are doing. It is about what you are not doing. It is about what is being delayed, what is being avoided, what is being pushed aside while your attention is occupied elsewhere. And the more important something is, the more resistance it tends to face. That is why the moments that matter most often feel the hardest to stay in. Not because they are difficult by nature, but because they are surrounded by interference. Small, subtle, persistent interruptions that seem insignificant on their own, but powerful when they are repeated over time. You may have noticed how certain environments affect your focus, how certain conversations leave your mind scattered instead of clear, how certain habits pull you away from awareness instead of bringing you closer to it. These are not just preferences or coincidences. They are influences, and influences shape attention, and attention determines what you experience. This is why resistance does not always appear as something obvious. It does not always come as a direct obstacle that you can easily identify and remove. Instead, it blends into your routine. It becomes part of what feels normal. It convinces you that nothing unusual is happening, even while it continuously redirects your focus away from what matters. But now, you are beginning to see it. You are beginning to recognize that the difficulty in staying present is not just a lack of discipline. It is not just a matter of effort. It is the result of something that has been consistently working to keep you from fully engaging with what is in front of you. And once you see that, you can respond differently. Because resistance loses its strength when it is recognized. The moment you become aware of how your attention is being pulled, you gain the ability to choose where it goes. The moment you notice the patterns that disrupt your focus, you can begin to step out of them. Not perfectly, not all at once, but intentionally. And intention changes everything. You do not need to fight every distraction. You do not need to force yourself into constant focus. But you do need to recognize when your attention is being redirected in a way that does not serve you. You do need to notice when something important is being replaced by something trivial. You do need to understand that not every thought, not every impulse, not every distraction deserves your attention. Because your attention is limited, and what you give it to determines what grows in your awareness. Right now, you are being asked to become more intentional with it, to notice when resistance appears, to recognize when distraction is pulling you away from something meaningful, to pause instead of automatically following the next thing that demands your focus. Because this moment requires that level of awareness. What you are being shown, what you are being guided toward, cannot be fully received if your attention is scattered. It cannot take shape if it is constantly interrupted. It requires presence. It requires stillness. It requires you to step out of the patterns that have kept you moving without noticing where you are going. And that is what this section is preparing you for. Not to eliminate every distraction, but to see it for what it is. Because once you see it, you are no longer controlled by it. And once you are no longer controlled by it, you can begin to move with clarity instead of confusion. Type "I choose focus" in the comments if you are ready to overcome distraction. Blessing code 7777 is now strengthening your clarity. There is a truth that is difficult to accept, but it becomes unavoidable once you begin to see clearly. Not every moment can be revisited. Not every opportunity returns in the same form. And not every delay is without consequence. You have lived most of your life believing that time will always give you another chance, that what you missed today will somehow circle back tomorrow, that what you postpone will still be waiting when you decide to return to it. But this moment is different. This moment is not designed to wait, and that is what gives it weight. You are standing in a window that has already begun to close, even if you cannot see it physically. You feel it instead, in the urgency that has been building, in the way your attention hath been drawn here again and again, in the sense that this is not something you can casually move past without consequence. That feeling is not pressure for the sake of pressure. It is awareness of timing, because delay has a cost. Not always immediate, not always obvious, but real. You have experienced this before in smaller ways. Moments where you felt you should act, but waited instead, only to later realize the situation had changed. Opportunities that once felt open, but no longer existed in the same way when you returned to them. Conversations that needed to happen at a certain time, but lost their meaning when postponed. These were not punishments. They were the natural movement of time. And what you are facing now operates on that same principle, but with greater significance. Because what is being presented to you in this moment is not just an idea or a feeling. It is alignment, a chance to step into clarity, to recognize what has been forming, to respond in a way that changes your direction moving forward. And alignment requires timing. It cannot be forced later if the moment passes. It cannot be recreated in the same way once it has moved forward. This is why delay matters. Not because you will lose everything if you wait, but because you will experience it differently. You will encounter it without the same clarity. You will approach it without the same awareness. You will move through it without fully understanding what it was meant to show you. And that is the true consequence, not loss, but limitation. Because when you miss the moment of awareness, you continue forward without the insight that moment carried. And that changes everything. Think about how different your decisions would have been in the past if you had seen clearly at the right time. How different your direction might be if you had responded when something first reached you instead of after it had already shifted. That is what is at stake here. Lot punishment, lot fear. But the difference between moving forward with clarity or moving forward with uncertainty. And clarity is always time sensitive. That is why this moment feels so focused. That is why it does not feel like something you can casually revisit later. Because the awareness you have right now is specific to this moment. It is connected to everything that has been building up to this point. And if you move past it, you will not return to it in the same state of awareness. You will return as someone who has already moved forward, and the moment will have moved with you. This is why you are being asked to respond now. Not in a rushed or panicked way, but in a present way. In a way that recognizes that this is not just another passing thought or temporary feeling. This is something that has reached a point where it needs your attention before it continues forward. Because it will continue forward, whether you engage with it or not. That is what makes time powerful. It does not pause. It does not wait for you to feel ready. It moves, and you move with it. But how you move, whether with awareness or without it, depends on how you respond in moments like this. Right now, you have awareness. Right now, you have clarity. Right now, you have the ability to recognize that something is happening that requires your attention, and that will not always feel this clear. That is the consequence of delay. Not that everything disappears, but that everything becomes less clear, less defined, less accessible in the way it is right now. And that subtle shift is enough to change how you experience what comes next. So this is not about fear. This is about recognition. Recognizing that this moment matters. Recognizing that your awareness right now is valuable. recognizing that your response is not neutral, it shapes what comes next. And this time, you are not being left unaware. You are being shown exactly what is at stake, not to overwhelm you, but to make sure you do not miss it again. Type "I respond" now in the comments if you are choosing not to delay. Blessing code 8888 is now activating divine timing in your life. As this message deepens and reveals what is at stake, understand that what you are receiving is not meant to stay contained within you. Just as a single flame can light an entire room, what has been ignited in your spirit is meant to reach others who are still in darkness. The Lord declares, "Give, and it shall be given unto you," not as a suggestion, but as a living command tied to divine flow. I feel led to speak directly to you. This is your moment to act, to become part of something greater than yourself. When you release your support through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code in the corner of this video, you are not giving to a channel. You are sowing into souls, into awakenings, into moments like this reaching someone at the exact second they need it. Do not hesitate. Do not overthink. Move with obedience. Because what you release now will return to you multiplied, and heaven is watching your response. Even now, after everything you have heard, after the urgency, after the warning, after the awareness that has been building within you, there is something you must not overlook. The door is still open. Not wide open in the way it may have been before, not without movement, not without time continuing forward, but open enough for you to step through if you choose to respond. This is where mercy meets urgency. Because if this moment were only about consequence, you would not be here. If this moment were only about what has already been missed, you would not be hearing this now. The very fact that you are still present, still aware, still able to recognize what is happening means that something has been held open for you. Something has been preserved long enough for you to step into it with clarity. That is not something you should take lightly. You have had moments in your life where opportunities closed without warning. Moments where something shifted and there was no time to go back, no chance to approach it differently. But this is not one of those moments. This is a moment where the door has not yet fully closed, even though the time around it is moving. And that is intentional. Because mercy does not remove urgency, but it allows you to respond within it. You are not being asked to rush blindly. You are not being forced into something without understanding. Instead, you are being given a brief, focused window where everything is clear enough for you to see what is in front of you. A moment where awareness is strong enough to guide your response. A moment where you are not operating in confusion, but in recognition. That is what makes this different from all the times before. Before, you skipped without realizing what you were skipping. Before, you delayed without understanding what was connected to the delay. Before, you moved forward without recognizing that something was trying to reach you. But now you are aware. Now, you are seeing what had been present all along. Now, you are standing in a moment where your response is informed, not accidental. And that changes everything. Because an open door only matters if you recognize it. There are people who walk past open doors every day without noticing them, simply because they are not looking. They are focused on what is behind them, or distracted by what is around them, or convinced that nothing meaningful is in front of them. But you are not in that position right now. You are not unaware. You are not distracted in the same way. You are looking directly at what is being presented to you. And the door is still there. You may feel a sense of hesitation, a part of you that wonders if you have delayed too long, if you have missed too much, if you have already stepped too far away from what was meant for you. That feeling is natural, but it is also misleading. Because if the door were truly closed, you would not feel the pull to step forward. You would not feel the clarity you are experiencing now. You would not be standing in a moment where everything is aligning enough for you to recognize what needs your attention. The presence of this moment is the proof that it is not too late, but it is also the indication that you cannot continue the same pattern, because an open door does not remain open indefinitely. It exists within a moment, within a period of time where response is possible. And once that moment moves forward, the door does not necessarily disappear, but it changes. It shifts. It becomes something that must be approached differently, with less clarity, with more uncertainty, with a different set of circumstances. That is why this moment matters. Not because it is your only chance, but because it is your clearest one. You are being given the opportunity to respond while everything is still visible, while your awareness is still strong, while the connection between what you are sensing and what you need to do is still clear. And that is a form of mercy that should not be overlooked. Because mercy does not mean endless delay. It means being given just enough time to respond. And that is where you are right now. Standing at a point where you can either step forward with clarity or return to the pattern that has kept you moving without awareness. Standing at a point where you can either engage with what is being presented or allow it to pass in the same way other moments have passed before. But this time, you know the difference. This time, you recognize what is happening. This time, you understand that the door is not just symbolic. It represents a real shift, a real opportunity, a real moment of alignment that is still within your reach. And now, the choice is yours. To remain where you are or to step forward. To observe or to act. To acknowledge you or to respond. Because the door is still open, but not forever. Type "I step forward" in the comments if you are ready to walk through the open door. Blessing code 9999 is now guiding your next step. Now that you have seen the pattern, now that you have felt the urgency, now that you recognize the door is still open, there is only one question that remains. What do you do with this moment? Because awareness without action changes nothing. Recognition without response leaves everything exactly where it was. And this moment was not given to you so you could simply observe it. It was given so you could align with it. Alignment does not begin with something complicated. It does not require you to change everything at once or to suddenly become something completely different. Alignment begins with a decision. A decision to stop moving the way you have been moving. A decision to step out of the automatic patterns that have been guiding your actions without your awareness. A decision to become fully present in what is happening right now. The first thing you must do is pause. Not briefly, not casually, but intentionally. You have been moving continuously, from one thought to the next, from one distraction to the next, from one moment to the next without fully settling into any of them. And that constant movement is what has kept you from recognizing what has been trying to reach you. So now, you must do the opposite. You must stop long enough to let your awareness catch up with where you actually are. This pause is not empty. It is where clarity begins. Because when you stop, when you remove yourself even briefly from the noise, from the constant input, from the endless cycle of reaction, something else becomes noticeable. The same voice that has been trying to reach you becomes clearer. The same awareness that has been buried under distraction begins to rise to the surface. And what once felt distant begins to feel present. That is the first shift. From movement to stillness. From reaction to awareness. From noise to clarity. Once you reach that point, the next step is to acknowledge what you already know. Not what you think you should know. Not what others expect from you. But what you have already been shown. because there is something within you right now that has become clear, even if you have not fully put it into words. Something you have been avoiding, delaying, or putting aside. And alignment requires honesty. You cannot align with something you refuse to acknowledge. So you must face it, without overthinking, without analyzing every detail, without trying to control what it means or where it will lead. Simply recognize it for what it is, a truth that has been present, waiting for you to see it clearly enough to respond. And once you acknowledge it, the next step becomes unavoidable. You must choose. Not later. Not when you feel more prepared. Not when everything becomes easier. But now, within this moment of clarity. Because a decision made in awareness carries power. It carries direction. It creates movement that is aligned instead of random. That choice does not have to be dramatic. It does not have to be visible to anyone else. But it has to be real. It has to be something you commit to internally. Something that shifts the way you move forward from this point. Because alignment is not about what you say. It is about what you do next. And what you do next will either continue the pattern or break it. This is where your attention becomes important again. Because after this moment, the same distractions will still exist. The same patterns will still try to pull you back into automatic behavior. The same impulses to delay or ignore will still appear. But now, you are not unaware of them. Now, you can recognize them as they happen. Now you can choose differently. That is what alignment looks like in real time. Not perfection, but awareness in action. Not control, but intentional movement. Not force, but consistent recognition of what matters and what does not. And this is something you can begin immediately. In the way you think. In the way you respond. In the way you choose what deserves your attention and what does not. Because alignment is not a distant goal. It is something that begins the moment you decide to move with awareness instead of habit. Right now, you are in that moment. You have paused. You have recognized. You have been shown what has been waiting for your attention. And now, you are being asked to respond. Not perfectly, not completely, but intentionally. Because intention is what transforms awareness into action. And action is what transforms this moment into something that carries forward into your life. So do not overcomplicate this. Do not wait for something else to confirm what you already feel. Do not return to the pattern that brought you here. Instead, move in a way that reflects what you now understand. In a way that aligns with what has been shown to you. In a way that ensures this moment is not just recognized, but used. Because this is not just a moment of awareness. This is a moment of decision. Type "I align" now in the comments if you are choosing to act with awareness. Blessing code 1010 is now activating aligned action in your life. Here is something powerful that happens the moment you choose to respond instead of delay. It is not always visible immediately. It does not always announce itself in a dramatic way, but it is real, and it begins the second your decision shifts from awareness into action. Because obedience, true, intentional response, creates movement that cannot exist without it. Up until now, much of what you have experienced had been building beneath the surface. Awareness has been forming. Patterns have been revealing themselves. Signals have been reaching you. But without response, all of that remains incomplete. It stays as potential instead of becoming direction. And that is why this next part matters so deeply. Because the moment you respond, something begins to change. Not outside first. Within. Your perception begins to shift. The same situations you once looked at with confusion begin to make more sense. The same areas of your life that felt uncertain begin to feel more defined. Not because everything has been solved, but because you are no longer looking at them from the same place. You are no longer disconnected from what is happening. You are engaged with it. And engagement changes everything. You will notice it in the way your thoughts settle. Where there was once constant movement, constant questioning, constant back and forth, there begins to be clarity. Not absolute answers to everything, but a steady understanding of what matters and what does not. You begin to recognize which directions feel aligned and which ones do not. You begin to trust what you are sensing instead of dismissing it. That is the first shift, from confusion to clarity. But it does not stop there, because once your internal alignment begins to change, your external experience starts to follow. Not instantly, not all at once, but gradually and consistently. You begin to encounter situations differently. You respond differently to the same circumstances that once controlled your reactions. You notice things you would have overlooked before. You avoid paths that would have previously pulled you in without awareness. This is not coincidence. This is alignment taking effect. Because when you move with awareness, you begin to interact with your environment in a completely different way. You are no longer reacting automatically. You are choosing intentionally. And those choices begin to shape your experience in ways that were not possible before. There is also something else that begins to happen. Resistance weakens. Not because it disappears completely, but because it no longer controls you in the same way. The distractions that once pulled your attention, without effort, begin to lose their grip. The patterns that once repeated without question begin to stand out more clearly. And because you can now see them, you are no longer guided by them. That is the second shift, from control to awareness. And awareness is stronger than control. Because when you are aware, you are not limited to one way of responding. You are not trapped in the same cycle. You are not moving without direction. You are choosing, moment by moment, how you engage with what is in front of you. This is where the real change begins. Not in a single moment, but in a series of moments where you continue to respond with awareness instead of habit. Each time you choose to stay present, to listen, to act intentionally, you reinforce the shift that has already begun. And over time, that shift becomes your new way of moving. But there is one more thing you need to understand. The shift is not just about making things easier. It is about making things clearer. Because clarity does not remove challenges. It changes how you experience them. It allows you to move through them with understanding instead of confusion. It allows you to see what is actually happening instead of reacting to what you assume is happening. And that difference is what transforms your experience. You will still encounter moments that require decisions. You will still face situations that test your awareness. But you will no longer approach them the same way. You will no longer feel as though you are moving without direction. Because you have already made the most important shift, the decision to respond. And that decision continues to carry forward. It does not end with this moment. It becomes part of how you move. This is why this section matters. Because it shows you what is on the other side of your response. Not perfection, not instant transformation, but a real, measurable shift in how you experience your life. A shift that begins within you and extends outward into everything you do. And it all starts with the choice you make in this moment. To respond, to align, to move forward with awareness instead of delay. Because once you do, the shift is already in motion. And it does not stop. Type "I embrace the shift" in the comments if you are ready to move forward with clarity. Blessing code 1111 is now activating transformation in your life. This is the moment everything hath been leading toward. Not just the words you have heard, not just the awareness that has been building, not just the patterns that have been revealed, but this exact point where you can no longer say you did not know. Because now, you do know. Now you see. Now, you understand that this is not just another passing message. This is a call. And it is final in a way that feels different from everything before. Not final as in ending everything. Not final as in removing all possibility. But final in the sense that this is the clearest, most direct, most undeniable moment you have been given. A moment where nothing is hidden, nothing is vague, nothing is left for later interpretation. Everything has been brought into your awareness so that your response can be intentional. And that is what makes it powerful. Because you are no longer standing in uncertainty. You are no longer guessing what this moment means. You are no longer unaware of what has been happening around you and within you. You have been shown enough to recognize that something real is taking place. And once you reach that level of awareness, the responsibility shifts. It shifts to you. Not in a heavy or overwhelming way, but in a clear and direct way. Because once you see, you are no longer responding from habit. You are responding from understanding. And that means your next step carries weight. It carries meaning. It carries consequence, not in a negative sense, but in a directional sense. Because what you do now determines how you move forward. This is what makes this the final call. Not because there will never be another moment, but because there will not be another moment exactly like this one. There will not be another moment where everything aligns in the same way, where your awareness is this clear, where your attention is this focused, where the connection between what you feel and what you need to do is this direct. Moments like this do not repeat. They move forward, and you either move with them, or you fall back into patterns that keep you in the same place. That is the choice in front of you. To move forward with what you now understand, or to return to what you have already recognized as limiting. To step into alignment, or to step back into delay. To respond, or to let the moment pass the way other moments have passed before. But this time, it will feel different if you let it pass. Because you will know. You will carry the awareness of what was available, of what could have been engaged with, of what you chose not to act on. And that awareness does not disappear. It stays with you. It shapes how you see future moments. It reminds you of what happens when you recognize something important and choose not to respond. That is why this is not a moment to overlook. This is not a moment to treat lightly. This is not a moment to push aside for later. Because later will not hold the same clarity. Later will not carry the same alignment. Later will not feel the same as right now. And that is the truth you must face. Heaven is not forcing you. It is not controlling your response. It is not removing your ability to choose. It is simply presenting the moment as clearly and possible and waiting. Waiting for you to step forward. Waiting for you to respond with the awareness you now have. Waiting for you to show that this moment was not wasted, not ignored, not treated as something ordinary. Because it was never ordinary. It was always meant to bring you here, to this point of decision, to this moment of clarity, to this opportunity to move differently than you have before. And now, everything is quiet enough for you to choose. No distractions, no confusion, no uncertainty about what is happening. Just you, your awareness, and the decision in front of you. So what will you do? Will you move forward with what you now understand? Will you step into alignment while the door is still open? Will you respond while the moment is still active? Or will you let it pass, knowing it will not return in the same way? This is your moment. Not tomorrow. Not later. Now, and whatever you choose will shape what comes next. Type I respond to the call in the comments if you are choosing to move forward. Blessing code 1212 is now sealing your alignment. As this final call settles into your spirit, understand this truth. What reached you today is not meant to stop with you. Just as a river flows and never keeps its water for itself, this message was placed in your path so it could continue through you into the lives of others who are still searching for clarity. The Lord declares, those who sow in obedience will reap in abundance. And right now, you are standing in a moment where your action can become part of someone else's awakening. I feel led to speak this directly into your spirit. When you release your support through the PayPal link in the description, or the QR code in the corner of this video, you are not just giving. You are planting a seed into God's work, into souls that are waiting for their moment just like you had yours. Do not hesitate, because hesitation is how moments are lost. Act now, move with obedience, and let your giving become a prophetic response that opens doors not only for others, but for your own life as well.